Former State Senator Mike Johnston dropped out of the U.S. Senate race this week. He was the fundraising leader in the Democratic primary with over $3.4 million raised, at least so far through July. Johnston cited John Hickenlooper's entry into the race, stating that he did not want to go negative against the former governor. Patty, do you think this is... Johnston was one of the only voices of the many people running in the Democratic primary that didn't come out and said, when Hickenlooper got in, well, this isn't a coronation, and I don't care that he's running. You didn't hear anything from Michael Johnston. Do you think this will set a trend, or is he by himself on the getting out to not have to go negative against John Hickenlooper?
Well, he will not be the only person who gets out, but he could see the writing on the wall in his case. And let's remember when Hickenlooper first got into politics, which was with the naming of Mile High Stadium. When he led that campaign from behind the bar at the Wine Coupe Brewing Company, definitely man of the people. We don't want to have it be taxpayer-funded stadium at Mile High. But that whole campaign to keep Mile High Stadium is really what moved him to the mayor's office, then moved him to the governor's office. So when he is on his game, to use a football analogy, really is pretty unbeatable. Will he be on his game coming out of the presidential race? Will he kind of get his mojo back and get rid of the national ties, which I think really didn't do him a big favor last week when the Nationals came out? I think he will become much more a man of the Colorado people, and I think Mike Johnston saw that. Mike had already just lost the race against Polis to get the Colorado Democratic nomination for governor. So why wouldn't he go and spend time with his nice family? He's got a great career. He's had a great career in education. He will have a long and great career after this, whether he stays in politics or wants to get back into education or do something else. But I think he did see he was not going to beat Hickenlooper in this. And I think wisely didn't want to go negative, because I think Hickenlooper will come back and try to do that nice guy, I'm not being negative too.
David, what do you think about, and I realize you've mentioned this before, that Hickenlooper may not be considered moderate among Republicans, but in that Democratic field, he's on the moderate side of that. Does this give him that lane almost entirely to himself?
Yes, in the modern Democratic Party, he's got the Menshevik lane all to himself, and there's a lot of fighting over in the Bolshevik lane. It's just the way of the world in both parties that the National Senatorial Campaign Committee, when they see a potential pickup seat, they come in and they see that there's somebody they think is clearly the strongest candidate. They come in and they bigfoot and they threaten and they do everything to try to clear the road for whoever they pick. And the other Dems in the race are understandably complaining about it, but that's how it's always been done by the national committees that lead a successful effort for their party that year. And Romanoff saw this happen to him last time he was running for Senate, which was against Michael Bennet in 2010. And it could have been a pretty even race, and Romanoff had a lot of advantages, but the Obama machine just turned on so massively and relentlessly pestered every Democratic voter who had no idea who these two guys are, that Bennet is the Obama man, and that took Bennet over the top. You can beat the national establishment if you have a good campaign. An example of that was Marco Rubio, who was the former House Speaker, like Romanoff was, so he had a good base. And Charlie Crist, the governor of Florida, whose ideology is skin deep and that all he cares about is his tan, was the preferred choice of the Republican National Senatorial Campaign Committee. Rubio beat him in the primary, and it was a tough and an uphill thing. So it is possible that Romanoff could replicate Rubio's success, but he partly needs to clear out the rest of the far left of the party to get a one-on-one versus Hickenlooper.
Eric, it's almost guaranteed, I guess you can't say until it actually happens guaranteed, that Colorado will get an 8th congressional district after the next census. Do you feel that Johnston might be saving this powder, as one of your terms, to run for that 8th congressional district?
I'm sure it's on Mike Johnston's mind. I don't think we've heard by all means the last from Mike Johnston in a political sense. It depends where that 8th district gets carved. It's going to be somewhere Denver, south suburbs of Denver, etc. I'm not sure it will be created for Mike Johnston. I think there's every chance it might be created for somebody of the other gender, maybe a minority female, whatever. I think there are other names probably higher on the list than Mike Johnston. I think interesting analysis from both David and Patty. I agree this was a wise decision, probably an inevitable decision on Johnston's part. He cannot afford a second loss in short order, because then your political career is really probably over. And he certainly could not afford a second loss in a primary. He couldn't afford to lose 2 primaries back to back. It will not be the last withdrawal we see. I think, you know, there was a treasure trove of talent, and there is a treasure trove of talent left in that race. And some names from John Walsh to Alice Madden to Dan Baer, obviously Romanoff. I don't know who's going to stay and who's going to get out. My prediction would be this thing David mentioned 2010 with Bennett and Romanoff, and I think it could come down to something like that with Hick and Romanoff, with Romanoff being being the hard left, Medicare for all in on Green New Deal kind of candidate that really, you know, makes liberal hearts go pitter patter. Hickenlooper occupying much more the centrist, so to speak, and establishment lane. And my guess is the outcome would be the same as in 2010 when Bennett beat Romanoff, and that Hickenlooper may well beat Romanoff with a few other candidates occupying the margins.
Natasha, how ugly is this going to get? I mean, Mike Johnston's decision was really based on, I don't want to go negative, but with all these different people and folks willing to go into a further end of a spectrum, progressiveness-wise, do you think it's going to get pretty dirty?
Well, it kind of depends on what you describe as dirty. Is this dirty on a personal level, in which case I think Coloradans have shown little appetite for that sort of politics. But if dirty includes going after Hickenlooper's record as both mayor and governor and raising some questions about decisions he made, I think that's a different conversation. And I think that is going to happen very quickly. It already has started on some level. And as these candidates have more and more opportunity to debate, that's what the conversation is going to focus on. If anything, I think people might bore of that, of having to talk so much about what Hickenlooper has done. And so I think candidates who can also focus on raising questions about that, but also bringing up what they want to do instead, what they might have done in that position as well, is going to be a more robust conversation for Colorado in general. But let's keep in mind, we are still over a year away. We are a long time away from the primary. What I find fascinating is that we live in a political cycle where this is such important news right now because people obviously care. So if it's going to get dirty, yes, I think that's a possibility, and it's going to happen earlier than I think perhaps ever before.